Welcome to Know This Live. I'm Zinhle Essamuah. Joining me today is social justice activist Tamika Mallory. Tamika is one of the founders of the Women's March and has been a prominent voice for racial justice. Today, we're going to be talking about her new book, State of Emergency: How We Win in the Country We Built. Tamika, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And I want to jump in just plainly with the title, State of Emergency. What is the state of emergency we're in right now in your assessment?
I think we have many institutional issues at this point that people are beginning to really see and sort of focus on. Obviously, the issue of police accountability is number one for a lot of folks who are very concerned about the murder of Black people across this nation. And so that is always at the forefront of the conversation. However, the entire criminal justice system needs an overhaul. I think that folks who feel like, okay, we saw a video for George Floyd, we know what happened, and we believe that the system should just do what it is supposed to do. But throughout the process, I think a lot of people begin to learn that, hey, there are issues and ways that if it had not been for a strong attorney general and also a jury that approached their work, if you will, from a very strong moral perspective, that it could have gone a different way. And we know that because people were way too nervous. Like we were sitting on the edge of our seats, not knowing whether that verdict would come back with guilty on all three charges. We didn't know, and we should have been confident. But we also, again, understand that there are many flaws within the criminal justice system that have to be corrected. But that's just one portion, and it's the hot button item that we talk about often. But there are issues within healthcare within this country that allows people who have mental health concerns to go unnoticed, to go unhealed. We're dealing with maternal death for Black women, a very serious and important issue. We're dealing with the murder of Black trans women, which is something that we're not talking about enough. In our education system, many of our young people are being lost, and particularly our young Black males. Housing poverty, we know, is rising. Gun violence within the community is a challenge. So we're dealing with several institutional, structural, foundational issues that really makes up the emergency that I talk about in the book.
And you break down that emergency pretty thoroughly. And I'm glad you mentioned George Floyd. It's been about a year since his death. It obviously sparked protests around the country and the world. We've now since seen former officer Derek Chauvin get arrested and convicted for murder. And after the murder of George Floyd, you gave what's now a viral speech, and you said, quote, arrest the cops, charge the cops, not just here in Minneapolis, charge them in every city across America where our people are being murdered. That's the bottom line. So I wonder now, almost over a year later, have things changed? Has enough been done?
Well, you had a verdict for Derek Chauvin to come out 2 days before we had to go to a funeral for Dante Wright. You had the funeral of Dante Wright take place a week before we buried Micaiah Bryant. These incidents and these situations continue to happen, and guess what? Those are just the incidents that we're seeing on TV or we're seeing on our cell phones, that we're seeing videos of. But there are incidents happening every day that are not recorded. And beyond that, we also have a situation where you look at people like Breonna Taylor, and while the officers responsible, a few of three of them, which is more than we are used to getting, all three of them have been fired at least. And her family, not only did they receive a settlement, but they also included within that settlement reforms for the city of Louisville. And the city has actually accepted and has been meeting with the family and other stakeholders about how to start approaching those reforms in the city. And so these are good things. But you also have the officer who killed Rayshard Brooks being restored, reinstated to his job. And I think that's the Black experience, unfortunately, that we're always seeing sort of the balance of something that happens that gives us hope, and then many things that makes us hopeless. And what we're trying to do is balance that out way more. In fact, we don't want to balance. We want it to tip to the side and be that the scale would be on the side of justice, equity, peace, and positivity for our communities. And I don't think we're there yet. And there's still a major struggle ahead of us.
And as you mentioned Micaiah Bryant, I'm mindful that I understand you attended her funeral. She's the 16-year-old Black girl who was killed by police while holding a knife. Why did you feel compelled to go to her funeral?
Well, the same police department, and I've received this feedback and information from local folks there in Columbus, Ohio, who have said that the same police department that killed Micaiah Bryant also shot and killed a 13-year-old within the last few years. Also killed a man in his garage who was supposed to be working with the police to get help, and the next thing you know, he was dead. A 16-year-old has been killed by this police department, a 21-year-old, several 21-year-olds. So the same police department that has killed those who you say their names, those who we feel are the perfect victims, that same police department killed Micaiah Bryant. And the thing that resonated for me, understanding that I work every single day alongside anti-violence activists, anti-violence advocates, and organizers who are locally impacting communities and saving lives. And there was a resounding message that came from them to say, we take guns, knives, bleach, and even hate out of the hearts and minds and hands of our young people every single day, and they go home alive for the most part. What is the difference between how these anti-violence activists who work on street corners day and night, what's the difference between how they're being trained and why they seem to have so much more concern, care, and the ability to have public safety measures in our communities that make us better, and the training that police officers have where they're showing up ready to shoot and kill, especially a young woman. And the question that I continuously ask, because I had a lot of Black folks who came to me and said, on this one, I could kind of see where the police officer had no choice. What if it was your child on the other end of the knife? Of course, we don't want to see that another person, which, by the way, I've been told by many people, including Micaiah's family, that it was not children that she was fighting at all. It was actually adults who had been there and who she had been complaining about over days and days, feeling that she was, being harassed and being, bullied. And so there, it seems from their family statements and the teachers and others who spoke of Micaiah as being this beautiful young girl who never really had problems with people, it seemed that this day it blew up, and she responded. Was it right to have a knife? Of course not. We know that. But at the same time, I'm constantly asking people, do they believe that an officer would have shown up in a white community and shot at women in the same way that Micaiah was shot? I don't think so. There's been no one who could respond to me and say, well, yeah, I see it happen all the time, or I've seen it in other instances, because it's not something that happens. And so I felt Micaiah deserved the same advocacy that we give to other people. And I'll say this and be done. The one of the things that really hurt me is that when I go to funerals, which I attend funerals, unfortunately, of people who've been killed by police all the time, and when I'm often there, these funerals are packed. Every news media outlet is there. You can't get in, and people are literally bargaining for seats like they're going to a concert. But in this situation, Micaiah Bryant's service, it was not the same. And that's why I wanted to be there to make sure that, her family knew that there were people like me who care.
And I appreciate you making that distinction. And your book dives into that too, right? The difference between the Black experience and specifically the white one. You have a section dedicated to Karenism, which I thought was an interesting coin of phrase. And you start it by saying, here is where I've saved my moment to speak directly to white women. What is your message to white women and perhaps just white people more widely?
Yeah, I think white women have to understand that while they are constantly asking us to join their fight to oppose and to address white men, to address their husbands, to fight for their rights, they have not shown up in the ways in which we need within the Black community and as Black women. And I think that it has to be challenged. It needs to be talked about. And of course, this is not all white women because I have white women that work with me every day. And sometimes their position and the ways in which they show up for me is better than some Black people that I know. So this is not to have a widespread or a broad painted brush against all white women. It's actually not that, but it is to say that the majority still need a hell of a lot of work. And it's work that we as Black people get tired of doing. We get tired of having to educate and inform and work with white women. And they need to really sit with themselves and do that work. And I try to draw a real picture for white women so that they can see themselves and how they operate within their on their jobs, in human resources departments, in parking lots where they feel the privilege to park in a space and call the cops on a Black woman who may get the space before them. I mean, we see the sort of Karenism play out all too often, the microaggressions. And it's not just unfair. It doesn't just feel bad. It's actually oppressive and abusive to women of color. And sometimes it can be the thing that creates a serious level of depression for us as Black women, especially if you have to go to work with these women on a regular basis. And so I try to make sure that while there are many white women who are listening to me, who are coming to me asking what can they do, that I put some raw truth in this book that they can actually turn to and look and see, am I displaying these characteristics?
And your book also starts by centering the voices of Black women. We have a forward from Cardi B and Angela Davis. And it's interesting hearing from Cardi B grappling with her role in activism. And so I wonder, A, why did you choose to lead and have these two Black women start off your book? But two, what is your message to those who might say, I don't know where I fit in these movements and these activism initiatives that we're seeing?
Yeah, well, I wanted this book to be one that Ray Ray and Keisha on a street corner would be appealing to them, and it would also be appealing to the doctor, the lawyer, the businessman, the CEO. I wanted it to be in church basements. I wanted it to be in trap houses. I wanted the strippers to be talking about, "Hey, have you seen State of Emergency? This is a book that's really good, and it's for us." And so when I was thinking of two individuals that can reach the entire universe, who better than Dr. Angela Davis and Cardi B? These are two people who are not necessarily likely individuals to sit together and do social justice work. But then again, they are. And if you look at the conversation that the two of them are having, it shows you a great display of what it is to be an intersectional movement, of what it is to ensure that we're not leaving anyone behind. I'm so grateful to Dr. Davis for taking the time, the special time that she took to speak back to Cardi B and to really let her know that there is a role for her in this work.
And I want to begin ending on policy. I know that House Majority Whip Clyburn said that he's willing to compromise on specifically qualified immunity when it comes to the George Floyd Justice and Policing bill, which would basically open up law enforcement to lawsuits and punishment for wrongdoing. I understand that you've worked closely with the family of George Floyd. What's your reaction to that?
I think qualified immunity is very important. It is really unfortunate that Representative Clyburn stepped into a situation to speak on something that he's not even at the negotiation table addressing. His caucus already did their part. The House passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and they sent it to the Senate. And the Senate now has a responsibility to pass it, and they should pass it as it is. And there are many individuals within the Senate who are pushing to do that. And I don't think it's helpful to have the interjection of a Black leader, someone that is well respected, who is now giving cover and opportunity for pieces of the bill to be taken away, and particularly qualified immunity, which we know and have heard from too many for this last several months, is so important and has and is really at the heart of the bill. Yes, there are other very important things in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Certainly there are, and certainly we understand compromise. But I don't think it was necessary to have him to come out and say what he said in this particular time. With that being said, hopefully they will all, and when I say they all, because I said that Representative Clyburn is not at the negotiating table, but yet we know he is a great negotiator. And we also know that as the whip, he is very, very influential and powerful. And so hopefully now that he has seen the outcry from the community asking him to not to compromise and to allow the process to go on, because even if it does not pass, even if the Justice and Policing Act does not pass, or if it doesn't pass with the things that we need, we should not be looking at a Black man as part of those who stopped it from happening. We ought to be able to see clearly those individuals who are responsible so that we can target them. But it hurts to have to also deal with what our own people have done to get in the way of what we believe is progress, even though still the Justice and Policing Act doesn't go far enough.
And I want to end on remarks from Vice President Kamala Harris in response to Republican Senator Tim Scott. She said, America is not a racist country, but said it's key to be honest about its racist history. So I wonder, A, do you agree with Vice President Harris? But B, we know that systemic racism is fact. And so just walk us through, how do we continue to combat this? Your book does that, but would love to just end on what are the solutions that you see?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the country is as racist as can be, and this is not, as you said. Vice President Harris said the history we have to deal with. We're dealing with the now story. It's happening today. This is not just history. And I think she knows that. And I understand as vice president, her intention is to bring people together and to try not to use a tone that can be considered divisive and painful and could create a situation where people turn off and they're not listening. But we're beyond that. We're at a place where when you ask what are the solutions, I think they all start with truth. They all start with transparency. They all start with being real, and just saying what is necessary. I think we are beyond the politically correct moment when we try to say things that make people feel comfortable to hear the pain that they are a part of inflicting against certain communities. And so that's number one. Number two is, yes, we do need policy. We need several pieces of legislation passed. And if I, had it my way, I would lean more towards passing the Breathe Act, which has several components, including much of what is in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, but it's really much more radical, and it's a hard shift towards the type of justice that we need to see. And we also need folks to continue to invest in movements, to continue to engage in donating to small organizations that are out here doing the work, to continue to support families and foundations that uplift and continue to keep the legacy of our lost ones alive. So there's a lot of work. And of course, we need people like you to keep speaking truth to power, to stay in positions where our stories can be told, and they can be told from us by us rather than other people shaping our narratives. So again, there's a lot of work to be done. And State of Emergency is a book that gives you the opportunity to find yourself in the pages and figure out what you can do.
Well, social justice activist Tamika Mallory, thank you so much for your time and your insights and your writing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
Of course, and thanks to everyone for watching. This has been Know This Live. I'm Zinhle Essamuah.